Okay, this is class number 2. We're going to go ahead and get started. We're talking about water tonight. So, where do we get our water? 30% of it comes from the Tolt River Shed, northeast of the city. 70% comes from the Cedar River watershed, which is kind of southeast of the city. So, really large areas. Unfortunately, they have a long way to go to get to us in the city, and the pipes, water and sewer, are very, very old, up to 100 years old. In fact, I think I read that the city just replaced the last little section of wooden pipe not too long ago, within the last 5 years. So, very, very old pipes, very prone to breaking, especially in earthquakes. So, that's why we talk about water. When the earth shakes, pipes break. All of them, anything buried underground is going to suffer from an earthquake. The water pipes, the sewer pipes, and the gas pipes. So just remember that when the earth shakes, pipes break. So after an earthquake, this is what you need to do. Check on people and pets around you. Make sure everyone's okay. And then you start taking care of the utilities. And the utility we're going to talk about tonight is the water. Next week is the other utilities. So you want to turn off water to the building you are in. Even if it was a mild earthquake, even if you don't know if the pipes are broken, go ahead and turn it off. That will prevent anyone from accidentally turning on a faucet or anything and bringing the mud and the contaminated water into your building. So the issue is the pipes break. The water is still probably pulled into your house or the building you're in, but it's also bringing in all the dirt that's around the pipes, and that could be significant. So always turn off the water to the building you are in because it's really easy to turn it back on. This is a typical single family home with water service coming in from the street. You'll notice that there's 2 spots where you can turn it off. The first one is in your house, so after the water pipe has entered your house, and the second one is out in the street, and we'll talk about both of those. Ideally, you would turn off the water as close to your house as possible, as close as possible to the building you're in. So in the house would be better because there could be a break in the line in between your house and the street. This is what it might look like in your house. One of the things on your to-do list is find, label, and educate family members on how to turn off the main water valves in your house and outside your house. Find the pipe coming into your house, label that turn off valve. You can see in the bottom left, there's a tag that I put on ours telling me what it is and then reminding me to turn it off when there's an earthquake. Out in the street, this is what it would look like. Take that cover off. It's usually full of dirt and muck and leaves. You're going to reach down there with your hand, or you can use a tool like the gentleman there has, and you're going to turn the valve so that it runs across the pipe. So that's on and that is off. I want to talk about Seattle Public Utilities. These are their priorities. If we were to have a big earthquake, these are their priorities. And getting water to us individuals on the ground is way low on their priority list. So, number 1 is fighting fires. Fires are super common after earthquakes because of gas leaks. So, number 1 job is to fight fires. Their number 2 job is to get water to essential facilities. So, hospitals and emergency response centers, the big places. And then they're going to start working on other city facilities and essential businesses. And then they'll think about emergency drinking water for you and I. And they're going to go to densely populated areas first, meaning high rises. They are not going to worry about single family homes by any stretch. And then they will go to less densely populated areas like single family homes or small apartment buildings. So as you can see, we are low on the list. If you're in a single family home, we are low on the list. And we have the ability to get water and store water in our home. Most of us don't rely on the city for drinking water. We are so low on the priority list. The city will eventually station things like this. I think there's like 4 or 6 in the entire city. They're called water buffaloes. There's some other name, but they will fill these up with water, position them in place. They have to figure out where to put them. They have to get the staff to man it, to keep it clean, to keep it filled. So there will be drinking water stations in a couple places through the city, but very, very few. Like I said, there's only like 4 to 6 of these water buffalo trucks in the city of Seattle. How much water do you need? The guidance is a gallon per person per day for 2 weeks, and absolutely more if you can. There's a question in the chat. I bought gallons of water a few years ago and it has expired. Does bottled water become dangerous after it expires? I'm surprised you have an expiration date on your bottle of water. Melanie, I would ask you to look at it again. They put expiration dates on the water back in the 70s for a while. And then my understanding is they stopped doing that. My reading from FEMA says that as long as the water was put into the bottle according to the manufacturer's directions, then there is no expiration date. So personally, if I were you, I would leave it there. If it looks like it's good, if it looks like it's intact, I would leave it there. And then we'll talk about how to maybe freshen up the water a little bit before you drink it. My concern is if you pull the water out, maybe it never gets put back in. On your to-do list, I want you to write down what is your goal for gallons of water? How many gallons of water should you have available? And then don't forget your pets. Add an extra 4 gallons of water. More if it's a big pet, less if it's a small pet. Add water for your pets as well. How am I supposed to store that much water? It's really difficult. Again, single family homes, we have space. The folks that live in towers, it's much tougher. Can I drink from streams, rivers, ponds, lakes, or mysterious springs? No, you cannot. And this is a very, very common misperception. A lot of folks assume that because we're surrounded by water, that they will be able to go down to Lake Union or Lake Washington, get a couple buckets, take it back to their house and clarify it enough to drink it. And that is not possible. And the reason for that is sewage will leak into the water system. And more importantly, it's the herbicides, the pesticides, the oil, the gasoline, all those chemicals that get into our water after an earthquake. You cannot get them out. The average citizen is not a chemist and cannot get that kind of contamination out of the water and make it safe enough to drink. So it is not recommended that you drink from any pool of water. And my understanding is that after a big earthquake, water will start popping up in strange places throughout the city, places that were not a spring of water before, and those are not going to be good for you. So best thing you can do is have bottled water as much as you possibly can. Have it in your home or have it close by, and don't rely on any other system to get water. Swimming pools or spas, nope. Again, it's the chemicals. You can't get rid of it. So you can use it for personal hygiene and maybe for cleaning, but not for drinking. You can't make it clean enough. There's something in the chat about water. That gallon per person per day for 2 weeks is supposed to be enough for drinking, cooking, and tiny, tiny bit of washing. Very, very little. My understanding from folks that have survived on a gallon per person per day is it's pretty slim. It is not that much. Here's a hot water tank, which is an amazing source of water. If you have a hot water tank in your home or apartment, that's sometimes 40 to 60 gallons of water. So that is a fabulous resource. It should not be your go-to resource because it takes hours and hours and hours, potentially days to cool down. So it should not be your go-to source. And you always want a redundant system. So even if you have a hot water tank, store as much bottled water as you possibly can. I want to point out that at the bottom of the hot water tank is how you get the water out, and it's very, very close to the ground. So we'll talk about that in a second. And that top arrow is pointing to the banding that is holding that hot water tank in place. The picture on the screen is not the right kind of banding to hold that hot water tank to the studs of your house. More than likely, if your house is turned over, recently at all, any kind of sale, new construction, anything like that, it is probably secured correctly. But take a look at it. If it's using this kind of strapping, get somebody that knows what they're doing, pull them in there and say, is this the right kind of strapping? And if it's not, switch it out, because you do not want that 40 to 60 gallons of water hitting the deck during an earthquake and you're losing all that water. Plus, it's a big mess to clean up. So don't use that kind of tape. You can use the water out of the tank of your toilets, not out of the bowl. It's too contaminated, but the tank can be used. You can make it drinkable You can also use it for cleaning or hygiene. Something I want to warn you about though is these tablets that everybody puts in the tank of the toilet bowl, whether they're blue or not. If you put any kind of chemical in the tank, then you have just eliminated your ability to use that water for anything. So I would avoid putting any kind of chemicals in the tank of your toilet bowl. And there's not that much water in there. There's probably maybe maybe 2 gallons, but it is a resource. Top left corner, we're talking about two different kinds of water containers. I would go for the one that's clear. In this case, it's a Crystal Geyser bottle, only because it's a little more sturdy than the milky white one on the left. Not a big difference, but if you're going to a store and you've got a choice between these two types of containers, go for the clear one. Like I said, it's just stronger. This, I think, is in a fabulous package. This is at Smart Food Service, and there's a couple locations throughout the city. That 6 pack of water, I think, is like $6. So 6 gallons packaged up. It's heavy, but it's a lot of water, packaged really tight. Throw it wherever you have extra storage space, and it won't even bounce around that much because they are all sealed together. So I think that's a fabulous deal if you need to get more water in your house, which most of us do. Clorox. I want to talk a little bit about Clorox. This is something I learned in all the research I've done for this stuff. Clorox actually deteriorates then about 6 months after you've purchased it and opened it and started using it. The potency goes down. So I would encourage everybody to buy bleach, but buy bleach in small bottles so that you go through it frequently. Don't buy a gallon of bleach and have it sit under your cabinet for 2 years. And then this hose, this is a washing machine hose, which is not meant to be drunk out of, but it would be helpful to be able to put that in the bottom of your hot water tank to get the water out. Because again, that valve on the bottom of your hot water tank is so low, it's really difficult to get any kind of container under there. So some kind of a small hose. Again, this is a washing machine hose. If you want to, you could spend the money to get a RV hose. Those are meant for filling up the water tank in an RV, and that kind of hose is actually made to handle potable water, so you won't get any strange chemicals. Something to think about. And then the large rain barrel looking thing, those you can store water in those. And if you're interested, I can show you I can send a document on how to fill that up and make it clean and safe and tuck that away, and hopefully you'll never need it. Not suitable for earthquake preparedness. This is where those camping filters come in to play. LifeStraw is just one of the brands. There's a million brands and they all do things a little bit differently. This particular model that we're looking at right here does not filter out any kind of chemicals, any petroleum products, fuel in the water, anything like that. So these LifeStraws are really good if you are backpacking somewhere and you have fresh, clean running water and you're nowhere near a city where all the chemicals are. They're lovely for that, but not a great option for an earthquake. And, what are you going to do after an earthquake? Every time you need something to drink, you're going to lay down on the ground and suck water out of a puddle or something. They're not very practical. Lovely for what they're good for, but not lovely after an earthquake. They just do not filter out all the chemicals that we have in an urban environment. This is something that I still hear, and it really surprises me, but I guess it shouldn't surprise me because it happens often enough. A lot of folks assume that they're going to fill up the bathtub after an earthquake. And that is not a good idea. And the reason is because as soon as you open that tap and start bringing in water into your house, you have the potential to bring in really contaminated water, and not mildly contaminated either. It could be super contaminated. This device where the plastic kind of lines your tub as you fill it up, these are fabulous for a hurricane or a typhoon. My husband grew up in Okinawa and they used to fill up the tub like that every time there was a typhoon headed their way because they would use that water to flush the toilets. So great if you have warning, but we don't have warnings for earthquakes. So do not plan on this being your water source, filling up your tub. Bad idea. That's all I have for water. I can't emphasize enough that you need to get as much as you can. Work with neighbors if you don't have space. Work with your building manager about how you can maybe get access to the hot water tank for the building. Every situation's a little bit unique. Please work with neighbors and whoever you need to get as much bottled water stored as you can. You will never regret that. The last thing we're going to talk about really quick is power outage lights. This is good for an earthquake, but it's also good for a power outage. These are lights that are plugged into sockets that you don't typically use. When the power goes out, they turn on. So great. It makes it easier to walk through your house. And then these particular models, you pull them out of the light socket and they become your flashlight. This is a special light bulb that turns on if it senses there's no power to your lamp. So I just want to make you aware of those. They're a little pricey, but if it's in the right situation and it would make you safer, then I think it's an amazing idea. Put these wherever they make sense in your household. And again, hope you'll never need them, but they are very useful for things even other than earthquakes. And then this is a hardwired light that again senses when the power has gone out and will turn on automatically and help you get to wherever it is you need to go. That's it. Power outage lights and water. Next week, 7 p.m., May 26th, we're going to talk about utilities and sanitation.